Winter horror stories that will give you chills. Winter, a season of calm white landscapes, warm fireplaces, and festive joy. But hidden between those snowy drifts and frostbitten winds lies a sinister side few dare to speak of. Tonight, we uncover that icy veil and explore 4 unnerving winter horror stories that promise to haunt your coldest nights. Let's begin. Our first story begins in the remote mountains, where a lone traveler found themselves caught in an unexpected turn of events. The traveler, a thrill-seeker looking for solace, was hiking the snowy trails of an isolated range. But as dusk fell, a ferocious snowstorm began to brew, forcing them to seek shelter. That's when the figure of a structure appeared through the storm, a towering lodge buried under a thick layer of snow. The building was entirely abandoned, furniture overturned, windows broken, a layer of frost forming over everything. Fireplaces sat empty as if they hadn't burned in decades. Desperate for warmth and safety, the traveler entered anyway. They explored cautiously, each step against the creaking wooden floor echoing like a whisper in the deafening silence. Then, the strange things began. Shadows moved across walls where no light flickered. Footsteps echoed above, impossible since no one else was there. In one room, they found rusted skis and gear that looked frozen in time, as though the owners had only just stepped away. A photograph on the wall unveiled smiling faces of guests from years ago, with one unsettling detail. Their eyes seemed to follow every movement. The climax came when the traveler entered a grand ballroom. There, faint music drifted through the frigid air, mismatched in its cheerful tone. The surrounding space flickered to life. Ghostly figures appeared in evening attire, dancing and laughing as snow dust swirled like an otherworldly glitter. But the image twisted quickly. The figures froze mid-dance, their joyous faces turning to expressions of bottomless despair. The traveler fled in terror, but as they raced out into the blizzard, they noticed something horrifying. The last footprints they had made to the lodge now led back inside, as though the lodge itself had absorbed them. To this day, no official records exist of the building's location. Only whispered accounts from those who claim to have seen it emerge during storms. Would you dare to enter if it called to you? Our second tale is taken straight from winter folklore, revolving around an urban legend known as the Iceman. In a small, snowbound town, the Iceman's story lingers like a constant chill in the air. According to local legend, he appears on snowy nights when the air stands deathly still. They say that if you peer outside on such nights, you might see faint tracks forming in the snow, heading towards your home. This tale centers on one family, a mother, father, and their young son, during one such quiet winter's night. Snow blanketed the streets, and any sound seemed swallowed by the dense cold. The family had heard the stories, but like most, they brushed them off as nothing more than fairy tales meant to scare children. That night, their son woke up crying, pointing toward the frosted window. "There's someone outside," he whispered. When the parents peeked, they saw nothing but snow and faint moonlight glinting against it. To pacify him, they reassured him it was a tree or shadow. But the next morning, they noticed something unsettling: a single set of footprints outside, leading from the sidewalk straight toward their front door. They were heavy, deep impressions, but ended right at the threshold, vanishing without a trace. What's more chilling? Those footprints weren't visible the night before. By the next evening, the boy became feverish and pale. As he lay curled in bed, he muttered about a cold man staring through the frosted glass. Oddly enough, the frost on the windows seemed etched with faint outlines of a face. Come morning, the boy was gone. His room was frozen over, the window left wide open, and the only clue: fresh footprints leading away into the snowstorm. In their grief, the parents swore they could still hear faint whispers outside on moonlit nights, where the Iceman was said to pass. Could something so simple and silent be so deadly? This next story takes us deeper into isolation, where winter's grip tightens its cold hands around a group of friends. 3 young adults, eager for an adventurous escape, planned a weekend in a mountainside cabin. Snowstorms were forecast, but they welcomed the challenge. It would add rustic charm to the trip. Upon arrival, the cabin seemed cozy, even quaint. A roaring fire, rustic tools hanging from the walls, and windows overlooking endless frozen woods. Everything seemed fine until one of them pointed out strange carvings etched into the wooden beams of the cabin, a series of haunting shapes and symbols. At first, they wrote it off as folk art or remnants from the previous owners. But as the snowstorm began, the carvings seemed to change. What began as decorative swirls and patterns morphed into clear depictions of the three friends. Each carving now portrayed a grim tableau, one being dragged into the woods by shadowy figures, another drowning beneath thick ice, and the last lost amidst endless snowdrifts. It wasn't just the designs that evolved. The locations of the carvings shifted in impossible ways, moving to different beams and walls without explanation. Panic took hold faster than the rising winds outside. Paranoid and trapped, the friends argued, each blaming the other for playing tricks. But as the night dragged on, the depictions grew darker. Blood-red lines now streaked across the carvings, adding horrific detail to their supposed fates. By morning, only one friend stumbled out of the cabin, frostbitten and delirious. They muttered incoherent words about the walls knowing their names. Locals who found them later claimed that the cabin burned down in a mysterious blaze soon after, with no records of who originally owned it or why it was abandoned. Was it just a case of hallucination, or some cursed remnant of winter itself? Our final story takes us to a quiet, festive town that became haunted by something lurking in plain sight. For years, this snow-covered place was adorned with glowing Christmas lights, homes and streets bathed in soft, colorful illuminations that reflected off the winter frost. It was a hallmark of the town, until one year when something sinister disrupted the holiday spirit. It began with whispered reports of a strange shadow. Despite its humanoid shape, it didn't belong to any living being. The disturbing part? It only appeared near glowing Christmas lights, stretching unnaturally long and moving even when the lights didn't flicker. The Smith family was among the first to notice it. Late one night, while huddled in their living room, they spotted the shadow along their wall. At first, they assumed it was cast by decorations in the yard or a passing car. But when their Christmas tree lights flickered on, the shadow moved closer, appearing sharper and larger than before. It didn't take long for others in the town to witness the shadow's eerie behavior. It would emerge under decorations, shift unnervingly against walls, and sometimes appear where light wasn't cast at all. Those who stayed too long under festive displays often felt their breath grow cold, their vision foggy, as though something unseen were stealing the warmth from their bodies. In desperation, residents began taking down their Christmas lights, opting for darkness over explaining the unexplainable. The town streets became eerily bleak, and by the end of that holiday season, not a single light shone. Now, locals whisper that the shadow still waits, and for the brave few who string their lights again, the shadow might reappear, watching, lurking, absorbing the warmth of their joy. Winter, a season many of us cherish, harbors its own chilling secrets. These stories have revealed its haunting side, reminding us how isolation, silence, and endless cold can become perfect breeding grounds for nightmares. So next time snow blankets your world and you find yourself surrounded by eerie quiet, think carefully. Listen to the winds, notice the shadows, and tread softly. After all, winter might not just be cold, it might be waiting. Do you still see winter as mystical and serene? Or will that snowstorm against your window tonight send a shiver down your spine? Let us know in the comments, but remember, never underestimate the horrors buried beneath the snow. Stay warm and stay safe.